Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone to back to our study of steps to the great perfection after this break. So I'm very happy to see that some of you haven't forgotten that we're still doing this and there's still somebody here, so that's great. So in the course of our study, I think we're near the end. I don't know if we'll finish today, but it's not impossible. The next study that I want to do will be Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche's short Ngondro teaching, which is called The Excellent Path to Enlightenment. It's a very short text that summarizes the Ngondro in general, and it also is a specific instruction for the short practice of the Ngondro according to Khyentse Wangpo. But I thought that would be a suitable text to continue with. So anyway, thank you very much for your greetings, and yes, good to be here. Hope you're all well. I hope everyone's practice is going well, and also remember that these Wednesday, Australia Wednesday at least, sessions, they are intended as also a forum for Ngondro in general, but also pretty much anybody who's practicing, but just as a forum also if you have questions and so forth. So please don't hesitate. All right. So presently then we are at the end of the book. Let's just see here. Yeah. Today the image of the from Nyoshu Ken Rinpoche's Tankas of the 12 Dzogchen Masters shows us see here shows us the 10th teacher, and in Wellsprings, which is then Wellsprings is the history. It's Eric Permakunsang's translation of a history of the Dzogchen lineage masters that you find in the I think it's the Vima Nyingtik, but it might be Vima Nyingtik or Khandro Nyingtik from what is known as the Nyingtik Yashi, the 4 sections of the Heart Essence teachings. So in there it says 10th, again at Vulture Peak. The teacher Kashyapa the Elder taught a retinue of 7 venerable arhats, and I think they are the ones we can see down there. The sublime teachings of the sutras and the tantric teachings on Kriya and Anuyoga in 75,000 parts. This was during the time when a lifespan could last 500 years. So the 12 Dzogchen teachers actually reflect that Dzogchen masters are not exclusively teaching just what we call Dzogchen. They would see Dzogchen as far more than just a set of teachings and practices. And in fact, simply being the recognition of the natural condition that is innate to all beings, and would then engage this in whatever ways that might be suitable. And that would, of course, also include all the other what we presently call the 84,000 teachings, but the general teachings on the gradual path or the tantric path, whatever they might be. So we see that Dzogchen masters, teachers are teaching, their teachings are not just limited to what we call Dzogchen. So, or rather they sort of expand our understanding of what we mean with Dzogchen. So we've been through the entire work, and we're now at the conclusion. The entire work that we've studied spans the reflection on impermanence, karma, suffering and compassion, the guru, meditation, negativity, and wisdom. And Jigme Lingpa, he says that it's very important that we don't leave this just as something we've studied, but it's something that informs our entire attitude, outlook, recognition of our given situation, and of course its potential. So as far as our given situation and our potential goes, then we, in my case, being neurotic sentient beings whose actions are informed by obscured habitual patterns, then there is a very real need for addressing this issue called samsara. At the same time, the nature of mind, which is then the potential of the path, the uncovering of this basic disposition, that is, of course, what we're doing. That is the objective. And particularly in the Vajrayana, this is so much what we keep in mind in terms of our outlook and our perceptions, particularly when we're doing sadhana or meditation practice. We sustain this recognition of the purity. But all of that is done with an understanding that presently we have something that needs to be addressed, and right now we have a unique opportunity for doing that. And so there has to be some sense of urgency and some sense that there's something needs to be done. And we can't really put it off till or assume that we're going to have the possibilities of doing this later. So with the practice of the path then, Jigme Lingpa continues, at that time, a superior student will reach the full expression of the wisdom mind, having driven home the nail of unchanging self-awareness. So with the practice of the path, then the student will reach or understand or unveil this natural condition through this continual condition of not being deceived, not being confused or fooled. So we call this self-awareness, not so much in the awareness of a sustaining self-consciousness or self-centering, obviously, but rather the self in this sense, rangrik, means naturally abiding. It abides in and of itself. So self in that sense. Tolerating weariness, fatigue, and ingratitude, he or she will be empowered as a regent who carries out enlightened activities for the benefit of others, and will be conferred the authority of a Vajra king or queen. This means then that throughout the path, not at any time being discouraged, then the practitioner continues, and the result is then enlightenment, where on the basis of enlightenment, then benefiting others. So this is described in terms of being a regent in the sense of one represents all the Buddhas, and one is invested with all the blessing, authority, and so forth of the enlightened ones. So we refer to that as a Vajra king. Those of moderate capacity will not perfect their ability to realize the unity of appearance and emptiness. Like a small stream in springtime, they will fluctuate between delusion and liberation, falling prey to various obstacles and false attainments, such as the demon of revelation and other temporary circumstances. So there might be those practitioners who, on the path then, have some difficulties. They might not understand how that whatever we perceive has no intrinsic inherent nature, and in this way they'll be fooled by their perceptions. Also their practice will fluctuate, and also they might fall under the influence of being inspired, having a sense of that messages are coming to them and so forth. The need to interpret what they're experiencing and so forth. So all of that we call the demon of revelation, and these are really just sidetracks that can happen to anybody, but it's just important to not be caught by them. So Jigme Lingpa goes on to say, without accomplishing their own benefit, they will make a show of benefiting others, engaging in a whole host of degenerate activities. So this is then where we see ambitious individuals who want to promote themselves as teachers, and in many cases also genuinely believe that they are qualified to do so. Such people are guides on the path to hell, linking whomever they encounter with the lower realms. Simply not being enlightened, then we just inspire others with non-enlightenment, and ultimately doesn't bring about anything constructive. On the other hand, if they don't wander about in this manner, but instead plant the victory banner of practice, they will be given the transmission that simultaneously accomplishes the two benefits. So if one is not deceived in this way, and even if one is not a perfect practitioner, but just persevering, then we call this planting the victory banner of practice, meaning we sit down in one place and we do what needs to be done. And that is then the metaphor for that is the victory banner of practice. And this benefits oneself, it benefits others, the two benefits. At the very least, one must avoid falling into the habit of harboring a negative attitude and setting a bad example for the teachings, either in the general sense or specifically by doing negative things, such as behaving inappropriately for the sake of friends and food. So even if we're not great practitioners, at least we shouldn't, embarrass ourselves, by inappropriate, short-sighted actions. Without becoming a heap of shortcomings, impervious to the Dharma, and with broken vows, one's conduct should be peaceful, subdued, and in harmony with the Dharma. The way one carries oneself should be an inspiration to others. One should also be able to distill the main principles of practice. In brief, one must be skilled in the methods and interdependent conditions involved in working with students and be able to outline the various stages of the clearly enumerated proscriptions and prohibitions that pertain to the samayas and vows, from those of individual liberation up to the Vajrayana. So we should avoid inappropriate behavior. We should act in harmony with the Dharma. Dugu Khyentse Rinpoche, he would say that the objective, the sign of a good practitioner is that the individual and the Dharma are no longer separate. That we say, Chütang Gangsak Drema, that there's the mingling of the individual and the Dharma. And that's being in harmony for the Dharma. And this inspires others, and also one should know what it is, what the Dharma is about. One should be able to see what is really, we shouldn't think of the Dharma as a lot of disparate, unconnected practices, but we should see the unity of the Dharma and how the main principles operate. So, in general, then one should be skillful and also understand the conditions that operate when we are working with other people, understanding their points of view, their needs, and also, if one can, read the signs and so forth that are involved with working with others and working in this world. Above all, one should be really clear on, as a practitioner, what it is that one should be avoiding. What is it that we are not engaging in? What's prescribed and prohibited, in the sense that there's some habitual patterns that are always lurking, and we need to not be prey or fall under their influence. So this applies regardless of whether we are ordained practitioners, keeping the Pratimoksha vows, or Mahayana practitioners, or Vajrayana practitioners. In ways such as these, one should bravely uphold the lineage of the victorious ones and be a worthy example of the conduct of a Vajra holder, as were the great scholar Vimalamitra, the second Buddha from Udayana Padmasambhava, the omniscient king of Dharma Longchenpa, Nradi Mahapandita, and others. So we should not have this self-deprecation that where we just define ourselves in terms of our confusion. And we should see the lifestyle of the enlightened ones as being a natural expression of the enlightened potential that everyone possesses. And so the way the way of the great masters of the past, they're relevant for us. They're not just sort of ideals that we have up here, but they're manifesting in the world was intended to be a message for us, not as that they came to be sort of adored as being super worldly and super Superman or superwomen. Their example reflects enlightened vision, and their conduct reflects this enlightened nature. So that's why we look to them, we read their life stories and so forth. By the way, you would all know these: Vimlamitra, Padmasambhava, Longchenpa. Ngari Mahapandita was a great Nyingma master, Ngari Pension, who was a treasure revealer and also somebody who wrote extensively on what we call the 3 levels of vows. He had a huge influence in the Nyingma tradition. Though they may trace their origins back to influential masters and others of good repute, those who are ignorant of such methods will themselves get caught up in afflictions, ignorance, and mistaken paths, and lead those with inferior merit to a similar faith. For this reason, I humbly request you, well-known Vajra masters of awareness, and whatever hidden masters are out there, to be aware of this manner of correctly elucidating the intent of the ocean of tantric principles, and with this awareness to shoulder the victory banner of the teachings of the ancient translation school secret mantra tradition. So so there is this continual discerning that things could go wrong on the path. Ego is tricky, spiritual materialism is rife, and we need to be onto the sort of the games of Mara, the games of our habitual patterns, our habitual insecurity, and so this applies all across the board, really. So we need to be attentive to our own shortcomings and so forth. And also he requests that the lineage holders of various kinds, whether they have a high or low profile, that they actually are really clear on how to understand and explain the teachings of the, particularly then the tantric traditions. As stated in the Great Perfection Tantras, in particular, train in all the practices and Dharma activities of this vehicle, skillfully and with ease. Make them abandon all connections and attachments to samsaric activities. Bestow the elaborate and other empowerments, and have them approach and accomplish the Yidam deities. Bestow the empowerments of the vehicle sequentially, and have them distinguish body and speech in rocky mountains or isolated charnel grounds. Have them clear up uncertainties about their studies, bestow the unelaborate and other empowerments, and train in time-appropriate conduct. Grant precepts according to scripture, just as a mother nourishes her tiny infant with intense love and affection. Offer the nectar-like milk of Samaya. Each and every teaching, without exception, radiates from a single point, a single root. This one thing is the root of compassion. Bestow the knowledge, wisdom, empowerment. Grant awareness in accord with aptitude. Teach the bear-like activity to satisfy the mind of the student. One should teach explicitly and elicit all signs. Bestow the word and expression empowerments, and casting off all activities with elaborations. Relax and let go into non-elaboration. Teach the deer-like activity. Point out the heart of the definitive meaning, and strike the nail of unchanging self-awareness. Empower your disciples as regents, and command them to benefit beings, while resting in concentration itself. Train in all the disciplines of the Bodhisattva, in order to be of service to others. At first, a student will not know the divisions of the Samaya vows, or the extent to which they are to be observed. The Guru should observe 2/3 of the Samaya vows with only a rough knowledge, 1/3 and with a detailed knowledge, 2/3 are what the students themselves should observe. At the right time, place, and circumstance, the Guru should explain to the student all the various prescriptions and prohibitions. The excellent quality of this are inconceivable. The lineage of all the Buddhas will not be broken. All the Buddhas of the 3 times gradually arose by training in this manner. Once a student has become your representative, he or she will dredge samsara from its very depths. The hook that leads all beings of the 3 realms, without exception, comes from this. Therefore, may the interdependent connection between Guru and student not go wrong. So these verses here pretty much sum up this section of conclusion, and this is then specifically then addressing the teachers on how they should train their students, but also implicitly here we get an idea of what we are doing with the path. So the student needs to be gradually trained, needs to gradually receive the 4 empowerments and taught the Samaya vows. I'm not so sure about what is intended here with when it speaks about the 2/3 and a third. Sorry about that, not familiar. But anyway, it is about keeping then the commitments of the practice. Essentially, people ask, what is it? How do we keep all the various samayas and so forth? There are some specifics, and of course these should be studied. But at the same time, also, I think for us, it really just applies to apply the Dharma, do the practice. If we're in the Ngondro, to do our particular sessions, and of course practice the general basics of the Buddhist path, not to harm others and to generate compassion, and then gradually cultivate the wisdom that sees through the confusion of samsara, benefiting others. So in training like that, then this is the path to enlightenment, but here specifically it is about the connection then with the teacher. Relying upon these practical methods as a ship to liberation, the key instructions that liberate through explanation, the young sea captain of my own mental discernment has spurned weariness and fatigue, shouldered an altruistic mindset, and ventured forth to the supreme treasure isle of omniscience. So Jigme Lingpa then is explaining where he has this from and his motivation. Then his aspiration is, may the victors of their offspring be overjoyed from the expanse and grant me the jewel of accomplishing the twofold benefit, meaning benefiting self and other. Jigme Lingpa writes, amazing. These precious freedoms and endowments are rare as a daytime star. Even when found, like a candle flame in the wind, they could vanish in an instant. Pondering this, most people seem like mad sea captains. The root of practice is renunciation. So if you don't use the key points of mind training to till the soil of your mind, hardened toward liberation, when death comes and you beat your chest with regret, it will be too late. When the karmic energies transform into the nature of wisdom, in tandem with the extinction of the dualistic perception of samsara and nirvana, the royal throne of Dharmakaya is seized. For such a master of awareness, there is no need to train the mind with webs of concepts. Yet for those sieve-like vessels and the sound of the flute player, that crooked class that believes the philosophies of the nihilists, and the immature beings who see happiness in samsara, What else can one feel other than overwhelming love? These instructions are not the explanations of a sophist, words that seduce the minds of the ignorant, like the water in a mirage that fools an elephant. They are instructions that allow us to cross over the ocean of scriptures and their meanings using the new ship of blessings of the true Tantra. The learned and accomplished masters of times past are gone, like the moon fading into the expanse. And the teaching and accomplishment of scripture and realization have set like the sun in the west. The planets and stars now shine, competing for wealth and power, while the teachings of the victorious one lie exhausted in pitch darkness. This song of the chariots and the 7 great treasuries, intoxicated as they are with the sanctified liquor of the 9 vehicles, this special wealth of the scripture and realization of the omniscient one who held the life force of the ancient translation is now held by me. Therefore, if you wonder what this close lineage is, Jigme sits on the crown of my head. Jigme is Longchenpa. There is nothing between me and the Lord of the teachings, of the old translations in general, and the hard essence in particular. This primordial protector, posing as a human, will clarify the essence of the teachings in this land. Thus was it prophesied by the late-born Vajra, in harmony with the sole intent of all masters of awareness. First fearing samsara, I turned my mind to liberation. Then I proceeded along the treacherous path of the infallible law of karma. In the end, I gained realization, knowing the 3 spheres to be unreal. This is the universal life story of siddhas. From the 5 precious letters of the heart essence, the intent of the copper letters is this 7-point mind training. Whatever merit comes from explaining this topic on a vast scale, I dedicate as a cause for attaining the jewel of omniscience. The pristine Jigme, lotus grove of my mind, inspired by the sun's rays, was again Longchenpa's name. I set forth this delightful grove as a gateway to the common path. May this beautifully arranged, vast, precious place of rest endure for a long time, bringing joy to its aspiring visitors. So these are the verses of dedication then from Jigme Lingpa. And again here we have the instructions outlined, recognizing the value of seizing the opportunity of the precious human rebirth, not following into neurotic action, being determined so that we don't have regret at the time of death, and attaining awakening. If we have awakening, then we have the confidence. We needn't worry about death and all these kind of superficial, from that point of view, superficial changes. And our actions will naturally be guided by compassion. So we should recognize the value of what we have and not be fooled by philosophies, particularly the nihilist, which are the ones that believe that there is nothing except just what we can perceive, and who have no real understanding of Buddha nature, have no real understanding of the nature of mind and how it plays out into samsara, plays out into nirvana. So without any understanding really of the consequences of the mind, then this is a dim, blank view of nothing. So these we call nihilists. And of course this is synonymous with the general scientific discourse that we see around us in modernity, in our present culture. So particularly for us, it applies to not be seduced by these philosophies, and at the same time, without despairing, we should feel compassion for all those that are held by these beliefs. So this is coming from a practitioner. This is somebody who has condensed then all the important instructions. And specifically then this comes from Jigme Lingpa, who in the course of his retreats fused his mind with the wisdom of Longchenpa and became inseparable from Longchenpa. And as such, then, the writings of Jigme Lingpa, they reflect the writings of Longchenpa, what we call here the chariots, Shinta, Shinta Namsum, which are then the commentaries of Longchenpa. There's certainly the Shinta Chenmo, which is the one that's the commentary for finding rest in the nature of mind. And there are, I think there might be some others. Cortland translates this in plural, so there must be another one as well. But we very often talk of Longchenpa's writings in terms of certain groups. And so we have the chariots. Then we have the 7 treasuries, which are famously then the Zödun, or the summary really of all the foundations of the Great Perfection teachings, also bringing in the context of the sutra teachings. So within the 7 treasuries, we really find all the Buddha's teachings, both the gradual sutra teachings and the teachings on the Great Perfection, sort of expounded in a very clear way. So in here we really find everything we could ever wish for in terms of clarifying the path. And so with this, then Jigme Lingpa proclaims that he is no different from Longchenpa. He says then, if you wonder what this close lineage is, Jigme Lingpa, meaning Longchenpa, sits on the crown of my head. And also there's a prophecy from, and as such, then he's the holder of all the teachings that come from Longchenpa, of all the Nyingma, the old translation teachings, and of course, particularly then the Dzogchen teaching, the heart essence teaching. And there's then also, he refers to a prophecy about his appearance by the lake-born Vajramin and Guru Rinpoche. So with this, then, he has clarified one section that you find in the Bimanyingtik, which are the what's called the precious letters. You have the gold, the letters in gold, the letters in copper, the letters in turquoise, and so forth. And these, the present one then comes from this section called the copper letters, letters written in copper. So again, this is something that is inspired by Longchenpa, Jigme Lingpa, and he dedicates this may bring liberation to those who read it. Actually, just check if there's any questions. By the way, I'd like to apologize. Some people have written me, and as I've been traveling, then I have been really been a little bit slack in particularly answering. Some people have written me some very thoughtful emails, and I haven't answered them. I've sort of attended to a few urgent, issues. But some of you, I really apologize because you've written some long, significant emails that I haven't answered, so I apologize. Are there techniques to enhance our ability to visualize all forms as deity, all sounds as mantra, as described in some of the teachings? Yes. It's called shamatha vipassana. Relaxing the mind, not being caught up, and not training ourselves in not taking our self-centered reactive patterns seriously. Relaxed, vast vision and practice, that naturally our projections onto phenomena fall away. And that serves as the foundation for seeing things clearly. And that's where we begin to see the sacred aspect of the deity, sacred aspect of all of what we hear, and so forth. That comes naturally. So that is the technique to enhance the ability to visualize, relaxing and practicing shamatha vipassana. What is bear-like and deer-like activity? I'm not sure what bear-like is about, actually. Deer-like is the renunciation. So we, like a deer that has been wounded and then goes and hides to let the wounds heal. What are the three realms or beings of the three realms? Three realms is a way of classifying samsara. And it refers to the realm of what we call the realm of desire, the realm of form, and formless. So these are the three. The realm of desire, realm of form, and the formless realm. And this means the realm of desire is the general three lower realms, sentient beings racked by the self-centered agenda of me and all the sort of panicked actions that drive us uniquely towards what we want. And that, of course, also sparks off the whole neurosis around aggression. But that's the foundation of the three lower realms. And it also it's also key within the both the human realm and the asura realm, the demigods, who are fighting again with this same sort of little bit sort of rather simple-minded agenda of me. Then you have the form realm, and that's already a bit sophisticated, and those who have learned to sort of chill out a little bit, and they then are reborn as gods. And then they then have a very easier time with their phenomena. They're living a much more comfortable life. And this, of course, comes from some skill in terms of wisdom, but it's still very much centered around me, and so it's still samsara. And then you have so that's the realm of form, and then you have the formless, which is those who are hardcore spiritual persons who absorb themselves in samadhi and who are then living without any particular reference to anything physical. And so they're absorbed in these higher realms of samadhi. But all of that still circles within samsara. So, realm of desire, realm of form, and realm of formlessness. How and where do we find out what all the Samaya vows are? Are they written down somewhere? There are in places. Again, there's a lot of information in that. It's in places like in the Treasury of Precious Qualities, and it's also in Light of Wisdom. But as long as we're doing the Ngondro, the main thing really is really just to persevere in the practice and also generate bodhicitta, avoiding harming others and so forth. So we should keep it simple for the time being. In the context of the Vajrayana, then it gets a bit more elaborate. But then again, I've noticed in terms of the modern day way of presenting this, and also with modern people sort of panic around being told what to do, there's not sort of presently not really an extensive culture of explaining the Samaya vows. But I think one good key one is when we say in terms of keeping the samayas of the Guru's body, speech, and mind, is just think what would the Guru do and abide as much as we can by the actions, physical, verbal, and mental, that we can identify in the Guru. Okay? Okay, good. All right, we'll just continue then. Like I said, I'm not entirely sure where we'll end today, but possibly we might end. We are at the place of dedication, so let's see. This text, The Steps to Liberation, carries the intent of the precious copper letters. So this, like I said, this is from the Bimanyintig and the Heart Essence teachings, the Vimalamitra's Dzogchen teachings that were brought to Tibet. I think they are unique to the Bimanyintig. They might be in the Ngondro. I'm not sure about that. It is both a general instruction manual on the Great Perfection and a set of essential instructions on the 7 forms of training the mind that provide access to the common preliminaries. Let me just say that in the Chetsun Yingti, they explain slightly different, the sequence is different, but also, despite the headings being apparently different, a lot of the material actually overlaps. And I would say, overall, these 7, particularly as we see in the beginning, that how they're defined by, what is it, Garab Dorje and Longchenpa, they actually correspond very much with the Chetsun Yingti 7 preliminary, the 7 mind trainings. And again, also, though Jigme Lingpa, he sort of goes slightly different places, I think we overall arrive at a sort of having covered the same basis in the context of these 7. Jigme Lingpa then writes, once, as I was applying myself diligently to the essential practice at a sacred spot called Self-Arisen Lotus, I met the wisdom form of the omniscient Chimursa for the second of what was to be 3 meetings. He gave me a volume of scripture and said, this clarifies all that is hidden within the great chariot. And that then is the extensive teaching on the gradual path. That's the commentary to finding rest in the nature of mind. So on Sundays, I've been trying to, here we have an important commentary on resting in the nature of mind, sending also by Longchenpa. This is what's then presently translated by the Padmakara people as finding rest in the nature of mind. And to the best of my ability, I've been using that in presenting this. But I've also been encouraged to find that Tralig Rinpoche, he has made sort of a rough summary of some of the teachings in there. So going back and forth between the two, this anyway constitutes pretty much an attempt to study this important commentary. So here then Longchenpa writes then that Longchenpa gave him then this volume of scripture and says, this clarifies all that is hidden within the great chariot and blessed me with the secret treasury of the 5-fold expanse. Based on this, I compiled a book of notes that I kept secret for several years. Eventually, the mad Vijayadhara, what's called Vijayavira, the knowledge holder, which is also like a warrior, of Kongpo, who was protected by descendants of Lord Nyang Nimawurza's lineage. Nyang Nimawurza was a great treasure revealer, very important, and so much of the teachings that we have in terms of Rinpoche's life and so forth, and also some of the early really important treasure teachings that really are the foundation for the Nyingmapas, come from Nyangro Nimawurza. He's sort of regarded as the first of what we call the 5 treasure kings, and he very much is sort of the quintessential representative of the Thermo treasure lineage. So so I'm not quite sure how we should understand the secret treasury of the 5-fold expanse. We could say is the treasury of the Dakinis, but there might be other ways of understanding this. And so then, Jigme Lingpa, he held it. He didn't tell anybody about these teachings. But then there was this mad Kongyun, so the mad Vijayavira, the mad awareness holder warrior, who then asked him, saying, "I know you have these teachings. Please start, spreading them, sharing them." He then comes from this blood lineage from Nyangro Nimawurza. And also another one, and one with pure perception, named Wakinra Ngawang. These two requesting then the teachings, he says, they provided the auspicious circumstances for the composition of this text with their fervent requests. Thus, 2,637 years after the second Buddha, the great Padmasambhava, was released from the center of a lotus bud in the Sindhu Ocean in the male wood monkey year, known as Tarana, 2,613 years after the awareness holder Vajradharma in Kilaka, the earth monkey year, turned the wheel of Dharma of the oceanic secret tantras for the 5 noble ones of enlightened family, a god, a naga, a yaksha, and a human awareness holder, on the peak of Mount Malaya, the king of mountains, and a rain of tantric texts fell on the roof of the palace of Indrabhuti, king of Sahor. So the first is then referring to Padmasambhava's birth. That is then the first one that's referred to. Then there's referring to the event when at the time the Buddha had passed. Then we say 5 great masters, 5 great awareness holders. They assembled at what is generally held to be Adam's Peak down in Sri Lanka, called Mount Malaya. But it said on Adam's Peak, then they lamented that there was no teacher in the world. And at that time, then, it said that the tantric texts then rained from the heaven, and specifically they landed on the palace, on the roof of one Indian king. And he then supplicating these texts on the basis also of a statue, then he began to receive some transmissions from the Sambhogakaya. So these are key events that are the foundation for the spreading of the tantric teachings, specifically the Nyingma teachings. Then he goes on to say, 2,296 years after the coming of the emanational display, Garab Dorje, an emanated reflection of the invincible protector, who was given the empowerment of direct anointment as the holder of all tantric, textual, and instructional teachings by the heroic Lord of Secrets in Kroda, the female wood ox here. So that's referring to Garab Dorje, who's the first human teacher of the Dzogchen teachings, and here it refers to him as having been taught by Vajrasattva, was anointed as the holder of the teachings. And pretty much everything we refer to as Dzogchen comes from Garab Dorje. Some of the other teachings we saw earlier now, the other teachers, like for example the teachings that came down to King Indrabhuti, these are generally the teachings on the Maha and Anu Yoga. And of course Guru Rinpoche is more general, he became a holder of all the various teachings. But all these are then, you would say, forefathers of what we're practicing now. 1,741 years after Vikrama, the iron dragon year that marked the birth of Vimlamitra, the crown ornament of 500 great scholars who attained the rainbow body. So this is Vimlamitra. And 450 years after the birth in Kilaka, the earth monkey year of Longchenpa, of glorious Samya, also known as the omniscient Lord of Speech Longchenpa, who attained omniscience of the definitive meaning. In the female iron snake year of the 13th sexagenary cycle, when the sun was abiding in the house of Scorpio, this text was completed by the renunciant yogi, Dharma Lord, Khyentse Wurzel, also known as Rinzin Jigme Lingpa, in the peaceful, naturally arisen stone abode of Tregu Cave at Samye Chimpu, the solitary place of Padmasambhava's speech. May it be virtuous from beginning to end. So 450 years after Longchenpa, and by the way, I might have mentioned this earlier, but I think also something to do with the day we began. I think it was the birthday of Jigme Lingpa that we began this study. I think sometime in January, right? Anyway, Jigme Lingpa was born on the day of Longchenpa's passing, and that's also seen as indicative of his close affinity with Longchenpa. So Jigme Lingpa wrote this in a place that was blessed by Padmasambhava. It's actually, we can visit it nowadays. It's called Sangchen Metopu, and it's just below what is known as Samye Chimpu. So if you travel to Tibet and you go to Samye, then you could very well go and visit. Particularly nowadays, you can get a tuk-tuk or a tractor that could drive you up to at least the basis of the mountain, and then you can walk up to the place of Padmasambhava. It's all sort of done within a day that you can go up there. And then just below where Padmasambhava taught, and where there's a little bit of a small temple, it's called Samye Chimpu. Just below that, there's a sort of a hump in the mountain, and that's called the Secret Lotus Cave. The Secret, Lotus Flower Cave. Secret Flower Cave. And this is the place then where Jigme Lingpa wrote this. He aspires may be virtuous from beginning to end. I think that's it. Yeah. I'm at the Kusali part of Mandala, and drowsiness is really becoming my main distraction. Normally, I'd bring my attention back to the visualization, just like how I'd return to the breath when getting distracted during meditation. Would this be okay? Certainly, whatever works. I've tried to drink lots of coffee and lots of rest, but still getting sleepy for more than half of my practice session. This will happen. And Jigme Lingpa was just talking about how he was persevering and so forth. This is where we just need to persevere. We will have things like that. Yes, there are tricks, but also we need to just be determined that even though this happens, and it's hard work because we're tired and sleepy and dull, to just persevere. But there are tricks. Lower the temperature, have a more cool environment if that's possible, more light, as much as you can, look up and dress lightly and so forth. Dinghu Rinpoche, he would also prescribe this, he would recommend this visualization of a sphere, an orb of light that sort of ascends up through our central channel, exits through our Brahmanical aperture, and continues ascending into space. So, but at the end of the day, it's soldiering on. So practice in a room with dark painted walls is not available. Well, it's very good if you're at the opposite. See, if we're a bit sort of like high and elated, then it can be good with dark surroundings. It's a little bit warmer, so on. So it really depends. Thank you so much for the teachings. Me too. Thank you. Auspiciously inspiring. Thank you. But we're really fortunate that we can encounter something like this. That we do have sometimes a little bit of a unimaginative culture in this world, and so we're fortunate that we have this. Okay, good. Thank you very much, guys. It's nice to be doing this. So I think the next thing we'll be doing is Path to Enlightenment. Excellent Path to Enlightenment. I was reading it recently, and thanks to being appointed Ngondro guy instructor, then I'm looking at these things that I haven't looked at for a long time, and I had forgotten how beautiful this excellent path to enlightenment is. So since we're all going to be covering these topics in the due course of our Ngondro practice, I think it's be great. Those of us who are not doing that particular Ngondro, and I think most people are doing the Chetsun or the Longchen Yingte, and also a variety of other Ngondros, but regardless, this one is really, it's very pithy. So I think it'd be good to go through that. Anyway, I was really joyful finding that, so I think we'll do that next time. Okay. Someone's saying, so anytime that we notice and focus on a special feeling or blessing, is that the demon of revelation? Not so much focusing or noticing it. It's more that we sort of get, caught up in it. And all of a sudden we feel we're anointed and we're destined to proclaim the truth and set ourselves up really as teachers who, then proclaim our own particular brand of spiritual path. So I don't think anybody here is severely afflicted by this. I wouldn't worry too much about it, but it is this phenomenon where we begin to. It's a little bit linked up with objectifying and to some extent also, yes, focusing, but solidifying things as they come up. When we're traveling, we're traveling, right? We're on a journey from confusion to non-confusion. On the path, there will be inevitably manifestations of less confusion, good things. So it's just like when we're traveling, we notice, that was Limoges, or that was Perugia, whatever it might be. Then we're traveling and we just notice that they were there, but we keep going. We're heading somewhere else. We're going to Paris, or we're going to Rome, or we're going to Sydney. We're not stopping. I mean, you can stop sometimes, but the thing is not to get attached if we're going somewhere, right? Any recommendations for lengths of shamatha sessions? Like, is it bad to do it for a whole hour or so? What we normally would say about shamatha, and I would say particularly in the Nyingma Kagyu context, shamatha and vipassana is so linked up. The instructions that we have, they're very often, we explain shamatha and vipassana differently, but in practice, it's united. And there we very often would say, if we practice for too long, we get a bit dull. So sitting for an entire hour, depending, of course, on what level we're at, but for most of us, that is a point where we could get a little bit dull. So what we very often do in at least what I do here in the Siddhartha intent, is when we're doing it as a group, then we do 20 minutes sitting, 10 minutes mindful walking, 20 minutes sitting. And in retreats then, where we're doing it over 2-hour sessions, we then have a break where we just sit and continue meditating, but drink some tea. Sit in a nice place and drink some, generally green tea. And it provides a little bit of a relaxation. And then we go back and we do another session of sitting, walking, sitting. When we're alone, we can sometimes actually even do this thing that is taught also, which is to just sit for a few minutes, 5 minutes, and then think, no, I'm not meditating. And then again, after a few minutes break, again, and just a few minutes, 5 minutes or whatever. We shouldn't get jumpy, but there should be this, there can, when we're alone, sort of just, it's really about being sure that we stay fresh. So of course we can sit for longer times, but sometimes we settle into a slightly dull space. So we need to be aware of that. But of course, it's not bad. I mean, sitting is always good, grounds us. It's a good thing. Good to be back. This practice helps other practice. Thank you. Oh, good. Okay, and someone says they're looking forward to the next text. This one has been useful. Thank you. Okay, good. Well, it's been a privilege, and so we're basically just going to continue. I'm traveling around a bit. I have no idea where I am next week, but this will continue. So I'll see you then. Thank you. Forgot something. Let's see here. Through this virtue may all beings throughout existence awaken together without a single being left behind. In the pure realm of the luminous essence, the ground of the great perfection, may they remain inseparable from the kayas and wisdoms. Through all our births, wherever we may be born, may we be endowed with the 7 good qualities of the higher realms. As soon as we are born, may we meet with the Dharma and have the freedom to practice it properly. At that time, may we please the holy gurus and practice the Dharma throughout the day and night. Realizing the Dharma and accomplishing its essential meaning, may we cross the ocean of existence in that life. Thoroughly teaching the holy Dharma in this world, may we never tire of accomplishing the benefit of others. By this vast benefit of others without partiality or bias, may all attain Buddhahood together.